What's going on? It's the Big Rig Bull Texas truck accident lawyer Reshard Alexander here today on a Wednesday afternoon in Houston, Texas. Look, I don't have too much time to talk today. I got to get up here, do this little board session real quick, and head off to Target or something to get prepared for this possible hurricane. But I wanted to remind you, if you haven't been paying attention to the news, because I talked to a few of my friends on the phone a few days ago, and they didn't even know that there was a potential hurricane heading towards the Louisiana, Texas coast. The weather reports are now saying it's pretty much 100% chance that I guess this Invest 92L is going to turn into a hurricane or some type of tropical storm. The only question now really is whether it will hit Houston. And so it looks like, or it appears that if it stays on the west side of Houston, I mean not on the west side like the city, but if it stays on to the east, I guess, of Houston, then we won't get that much rain. However, if it is like a direct hit or tends to drift a little bit more to the left, then we may get a lot of rain. Looks like Louisiana has already declared a state of emergency. I don't know how that's going to affect truckers and transportation services, in the midst of all that. But I wanted to take this this brief moment to remind you that you need to buy a few different things if you can in preparation of hurricane season. So the first thing I would say is that you need to get some canned goods. Can you see that? Yeah, canned goods. Buy some canned goods. You need a flashlight if you don't already have one. This is one that I strongly suggest is the mag light. It works really well, and it can double as protection, because it's a pretty heavy, sturdy flashlight. The other thing is a knife. I have a knife, this one, that I like to use in these types of situations. This is a Camelus survival knife. If you look at it, it has a serrated edge on the edge of it, bayonet, hammer. I usually don't bring it to the office, so I keep it at home, but I brought it up here for the purposes of this blog. The other thing you need to get, bottled water. Obviously your body can go a lot longer without food, a few more days, than it can go without fresh, clean water. So you need to always make sure you have some fresh water. The other thing is you probably want to get some plastic bags. I didn't bring any plastic bags up here with me to the office, but you should get some plastic bags to save your identification inside of it, to keep it dry, or any other valuables like your social security number, passport, stuff like that. And if you can afford a generator, obviously a generator is a good thing to have, because if the power goes out for an extended period of time, then you won't have electricity. Probably the other thing, and I may be missing some things, what I would do is tune in to the local news or type in, hurricane preparedness. What do you need? That's the other thing. But the last thing, you probably want a cooler, so that if you have to fill it up with ice, you can keep perishable items in that for some period of time. If the power just goes out unexpectedly, and you have a ton of items in your refrigerator. And probably the last thing is you need to charge your phones up. In the event that the hurricane is like right upon us, or it's in the Gulf and it's about to come into Houston, you should make sure you keep your phones charged up. Other than that, gas in your car, Get your car gassed up in case you have to leave the area that you're in. And a canoe if you can afford it. I mean, because we remember what happened with Hurricane Harvey. Some people had to actually canoe into their neighborhoods. But other than that, I just hope that everyone's safe. Don't drive if the water looks deep. Don't drive through water. I mean, you're always going to put yourself in danger, and if you can't swim, it makes it even 10 times worse. Think out, how you would get out of your neighborhood in the event that you had to deal with a hurricane. Where would you go? Contact your family or friends, if they're in another city or state, so that you have a place to go if you need something. And I hope that everyone makes it through this safely. I hope we don't have a hurricane. Honestly, I hope it just kind of fades out and we can all go on with our lives. But we know, living down here on the Gulf Coast, that's just not a reasonable train of thought, when we deal with hurricanes every year. What's going on? It's the Big Rig Bull Texas truck accident lawyer Reshard Alexander here again today. I'm hoping you can hear me because this is a much bigger board. I'm in a different conference room and you're a lot further away from me than you usually are. So I'm hoping this audio is picking up well. If it's not, then oh well, we'll just have to deal with it. Today, this is episode 45, and I think we're on part 3 of the hazardous materials compliance section that we're going over. Now, all this stuff is dealing with the hazardous materials regulations. It's dealing with the hazardous transportation, or the transportation of hazardous materials on commercial motor vehicles throughout the nation, really. But the state of Texas as well. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, yesterday I talked about the different classes and the different divisions of hazardous materials found in the HMRs and the tables. Today, additionally, I covered the difference between a hazardous waste, hazardous substance, and the definition of a hazardous material. I wanted to jump in exactly where we left off, and that's dealing with elevated temperature materials and marine pollutants, because those are the other categories that, or definitions that flow into hazardous material. So an elevated temperature material is an elevated temperature material is a material offered for transportation in a bulk packaging and meets one of the following criteria. It is a liquid at a temperature at or above 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. It is a liquid with a flash point at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 37.8 Celsius that is intentionally heated and transported at or above its flash point. Or the last category can fit into, it is in a solid phase and at a temperature at or above 464 degrees Fahrenheit or 240 degrees Celsius. Okay. Moving on to marine pollutants. A marine pollutant is a material that's listed in Appendix B to Section 172.01, and when in a solution or mixture of one or more marine pollutants is packaged in a concentration which equals or exceeds, number 1, 10% by weight of the solution or mixture, or 2, it is 1% by weight of the solution or mixture for materials that are identified as a severe marine pollutant, otherwise known as PP, in Appendix B. All right. Additionally, I wanted to talk very briefly. We went over the packing groups in a previous vlog. I think the first one when we actually talked about hazardous materials. But I wanted to talk about it again because it flows back into the materials of trade exceptions. A packaging group. So when hazardous material is transported, it gets a packing group label. Okay, it indicates the degree of danger that's presented by the hazardous material. So the packing group number 1 is like the greatest danger. There are 3 packing groups. Packing 1 is great danger. Packing 2 is medium, and packing group 3 is minor. Now there are a few exceptions that don't fall into any of these packing groups, and they are Class 2, Class 7, ORMD, or other regulated materials we talked about yesterday, and some division 6.2 in class non-materials, class non-materials being miscellaneous materials. So moving on to materials of trade, or MOT. Now the thing about it is a commercial motor vehicle cannot have a gross weight of a materials of trade that exceeds 400 pounds, but that's not including 400 gallons of a diluted material mixture of a class non material, so a miscellaneous material. Hazardous materials carried on a commercial motor vehicle fit into the exception, or fit into the materials trade exception, when they are for the purpose of protecting the health and safety of the motor vehicle operator or the passengers. Number 2, for the purpose of supporting the operation or maintenance of a motor vehicle, including its auxiliary equipment. Or 3, by a private motor carrier in direct support of a principal business that is other than transportation by motor vehicle. All right. Now, these are some of the exceptions. These ones: limited quantities, consumer commodities, combustible liquids, batteries, and reverse logistics. Okay. So with limited quantities, LQs are smaller amounts of hazmat material in non-bulk combination packages. Non-bulk combination packages. Key term. This exception can only be used for material if column 8A of the hazardous materials tables references the specific section in part 173. So you got to look it up every time just to make sure that it actually will fit in there. If it's in a bulk combination, I mean, you're not probably going to be able to get away with that exception. As I said before, combo packaging means that the limited quantity must conform to proper specifications. It must conform to quantity. It must conform to weight limits for each hazard class and division and the packing group. So see, now you see why it was so important to go back and not only talk about the hazard class and division that we did yesterday, but also talk about the packing groups. Because the packing groups and the class and division can tell you or determine whether or not you are in that limited quantity exception. Moving right along, we're going on to consumer commodities. You may not be able to read this, so it says, limited quantity of a hazardous material is packaged and distributed in a form intended or suitable for sale through retail sales agencies or instrumentalities for consumption by individuals for purpose of personal care or household use. So I mean, you're thinking about like bleach and stuff like that, stuff that is sold through your local chains, your Walmart, your Targets, and stuff like that. Now, this is the thing: if you have a consumer commodity that meets that definition, if you have a hazardous material that meets the definition of a consumer commodity, and it's also meeting the definition of the limited quantity amount as far as small amounts of hazmat materials in non-bulk combination packages, if you combine those two, what it equals is this is now a consumer commodity, but it also can be classified as an ORMD classification, meaning it is an other regulated material. Now, this other regulated material classification is being phased out January 1st, 2021. So after that, I believe you'll have to do something as far as a square marking of it as far as the material. But until then, it can be classified as an ORMD classification. But like I said, that's only until 2021. The next topic is combustible liquids. Combustible liquids do not meet the definition of any other hazard class and have a flash point above 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius, and below 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 93 degrees Celsius. Class 3 materials with flash points at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius that do not meet the definition of any hazard class may be reclassified as a combustible liquid for transportation by highway or rail. Now, one of the most important things to remember about combustible liquids is that if it doesn't meet the definition of a hazardous substance, hazardous waste, or marine pollutant, and it isn't transported, in bulk packaging, then it's not going to be subject to the HMRs, the hazardous material regulations. However, if you're in a situation where you have a hazardous substance, a hazardous waste, or marine pollutant, and it's transported by bulk packaging, it's going to be subject to HMRs. Okay. The second to last thing is batteries. So the main thing that you need to know about batteries is that if it's not a spillable battery, that means it's going to be accepted. It's going to be an exception from the HMRs, and it has to be in compliance through section 173.159A. That's where you'll find whether or not that battery is in compliance with, with the HMRs, and if it'll be accepted. The other thing is there are a few ways to know, if a storage battery is going to be accepted. So when I say a storage battery, what I mean is that either contains electrolytes or corrosive battery fluid. If it has one of those two in it, it'll be accepted if there is no other hazardous material that's being transported on the vehicle at the time. It's been loaded and braced inside the trailer to prevent damage. Other material has been braced to prevent contact with the batteries, and the vehicle is not carrying any material shipped by any other person other than the shipper of the batteries. Okay. The last thing is reverse logistics. Reverse logistics is, for the sake of brevity, what it really is just a return of goods from a retail store to a manufacturer, a distributor, or a supplier for the purpose of capturing value or credit. So that's what I underline here, is that it's really about recapturing, the purpose of capturing value or recapturing credit. You still have to abide by certain packaging requirements. You still have to abide by certain segregation requirements. You still have to abide by incident reporting requirements, and it has to be labeled according to 49 CFR 173-157. So this wraps up part 3 of our conversation about hazardous materials compliance. This is the Big Rig Bull, Texas truck accident lawyer Reshard Alexander, signing out. Hoping you have a blessed day and have a safe, next few days dealing with this hurricane. I hope to see you tomorrow. Take it easy.